There have been at least 6 incursions by Russian air assets into Nato airspace in just the past 2 months, including the flight of 19 Russian drones into Polish airspace.
Just this week, Polish fighter jets have launched twice to intercept Russian intelligence aircraft flying over the Baltic Sea without transponders. So, what is Russia's game plan? How does NATO defend? And just how dangerous a moment is this in terms of escalation?
He's Mikey, former RAF pilot and military planner. I'm Christian Fraser. We'll break it all down for you. This is the Security Brief. Mikey, this game of cat and mouse that the Russians are playing with the West, that's been ongoing since NATO's inception in 1949. What's different about this period that we're in now?
I think it's twofold, Christian. I think the first part is that incursions by Russian jets inside NATO's sovereign airspace have been ratcheted up considerably. But then also you've got the tensions of Russia's consistent bombardment of Ukraine with drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. Let's take a listen to the Polish foreign minister addressing an emergency UN Security Council meeting.
I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned.
Can we look at those latest incursions? What do you see in them?
Yeah, I think what's notable about them are sort of the variety of situations in which breaches are taking place. Let's take a look. So the first one I want to address was back in May. It was a Su-35 Russian jet that was effectively doing a show of force inside Estonian territorial waters in the Gulf of Finland. And it was doing that because Russia had a shadow tanker. It's one of these tankers that are being used to circumnavigate sanctions. And the Su-35 was doing a show of force because Estonian maritime naval security forces were trying to apprehend the tanker.
Is there anything unusual about that?
I mean, not so much from what's called QRA, Quick Reaction Alert. It was only one Su-35 that breached Estonian airspace. Traditionally, when you have Quick Reaction Alert, whether it's NATO or whether it's Russia, they'll always launch as a pair, so 2 aircraft. And the reason for that is mutual support, especially if they're going into something that's potentially confrontational.
But then we had these Russian drones coming into Polish airspace.
Yeah, significant amount, 19 of them, unannounced, called the Gerber drone. I think we can take a look at that. Now, this is similar in shape, Christian, to what's called the Geran 2. The Geran 2 was a drone that was made off an Iranian blueprint called the Shahed 136. The thing about the Gerber is it's got a smaller payload, and it's made out of polystyrene and plywood. Now, from the Gerbers that have been shot down and analysed, the big analysis comes, it's a 1/10 cheaper to make this Gerber drone. So you've got additional drones that can just be used alongside the Geran 2s. The Geran 2s are longer range, bigger payload, more deadly if you like, but it just throws more drones up there and overwhelms air defences.
But then you've got these 3 Russian jets inside Estonian airspace.
These were 3 MiG-31 Foxhound aircraft. Massively significant because they've got a speed of about Mach 2.8, so they're incredibly fast. Important to note that that speed does come down depending on the weapons fit of the aircraft. But the big thing here is that it was 12 minutes inside sovereign airspace with their transponders turned off. Now, let's just talk to the audience here about what a transponder is. It's a small box in the cockpit. Every aircraft has them, both military and general air traffic, which are the airlines that we fly. And it allows the pilots and the crew to put in a 4-digit code. That 4-digit code is usually given to them by area radar. And then what comes up, it's called secondary surveillance radar, will pick up the 4-digit code on the area radar screen, and then they can positively identify the jet. It's not just about identifying its location. This box has the ability under what's called Mode Charlie to put height on there as well. So none of that information was on there. The jets will have been picked up through primary radar, so just come up as a little blip.
And then 2 Russian aircraft in Lithuanian airspace?
Yeah, this was less of a threat. It was a Su-30 Russian fighter jet, and it was actually tanking off the back of what's called an Ilyushin 78, which is a Russian tanker. That was only 700 meters inside Lithuanian airspace, and it was only there for about 18 seconds, and that was down in Russia's exclave region called Kaliningrad. So in terms of threat posture, likely a mistake. However, inside sovereign airspace, nevertheless.
Nonetheless, what all this shows is that the tempo is increasing.
Yeah, it is. The tempo is increasing. The same day as the Su-30 and the Ilyushin 78, there were 2 Russian fighter jets that violated an economic security zone over a Polish drilling platform inside the Baltic Sea.
Well, let's talk about the latest incursions that took place this week over the Baltic Sea. Russian reconnaissance flights intercepted twice by Polish fighters. We can speak to General Dymanowski. He's the Vice Chief of Defence in Poland. Thank you very much for being with us on the Security Brief. What can you tell us about these latest incursions and how the Polish Air Force responded?
First and foremost, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Now, answering your question, of course, Polish responded according to our national and allied procedures, which are implemented in the integrated air defense system. And we sent off our quick reaction alert aircraft, which intercepted and escorted the Russian reconnaissance aircraft. They have not violated our airspace. There was no incursion. However, they didn't fly according to the flight plan, and they cause also threat to the air traffic because they have their transponders turned off.
It's not just military assets. We've had Lithuanian airspace closed this week by smuggling balloons, helium balloons, launched from areas that are in control of the Belarusian KGB. NATO says it's time to hit back, but what does that actually mean practically? What is an effective, proportionate response that would deter these kind of hybrid attacks without sort of triggering an escalation?
That's a very good question, and it is kind of a challenge for us as NATO, because Russia has never been one-directional and one-dimensional. They've always been multi-directional, multi-dimensional. So our response should be exactly the same. And they will apply different type of assets. As you said, there will be military assets, there will be some kind of service assets, or maybe civilian assets, just to cause problems for us, for NATO. So our response should be multi-layered, I would say. So first and foremost, we should be very robust, firm, but at the same time resolute with our military response. So we always should react in a very at the speed of relevance, very quick and very fast. Then, of course, there's additional layer about building up our capabilities along the eastern flank and around our key military and civilian infrastructure. So it will be a little bit longer term endeavor just to boost up our air defense capabilities. And finally, we will have some kind of strategic response, which will be a coupling of political, diplomatic, strategic messaging, and at the same time building up strategic capabilities, not only to show Russia our deterrence by denial, but also to show Russia our strength and, if necessary, possibility of use other assets to protect our sovereignty and to protect our territory.
Just on that point, General, we just played a clip of the Polish foreign minister saying, don't whine within the Security Council if we shoot down one of your jets. I mean, do you feel, in a military capacity, that you have a green light to shoot down one of these jets if you were pushed to the furthest extent?
Well, the primary task of the Polish armed forces and the alliance is to protect and defend our territory and sovereignty. And we will always follow the rules and procedures. So in order to achieve this primary task. And we'll always act according by the books. But whenever there is a very important, a very deep incursion into Polish territory or rivalized territory, we will act accordingly. So we will take all the measures to stop the danger and stop the threat.
General, it's Mikey again. Former RAF pilot, I've flown in Typhoon. I understand the graduated and proportionate options that are available to not just UK fighter pilots on quick reaction alert, but to any fighter pilots across NATO defense that are in this position. Unless the Russians know that the graduated and proportionate response can be up to and including the use of lethal force. How do you portray, or how do you deliver that intent to Putin to let him know that actually you actually will take what is necessary, which can include the shooting down of a jet? How do you deliver that message?
That's a very tough question again, because it's all about strategic communication. So it is about feelings and perception, not about physical actions. We can only show our determination by training and exercises and the posture of our forces. So as I said, we have to be very determined and resolved in our reactions, and we have to show them that we can act at the speed of relevance, that we can hear, we can see them, and we have assets ready to respond. And it should be always act according to the books, but we should be always following their actions, showing our readiness. And of course, the rest is kind of the perception. And part of the story is also unity among our allies, that there is one united message sent to Mr. Putin, that we are united and will act together. And we are showing that to Russia already, because we have a great support here in Poland from our allies in enhancing our air defense, both from the airborne assets and ground-based assets. So altogether, I think combining those military exercises, military posture, and military missions, together with a strong strategic communication, we might be able to get across our message to Mr. Putin and to Kremlin.
It's really interesting. General Dymanovsky, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you for coming on the Security Brief.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mikey, there are obviously sensitive defence reasons why the General can't go into some of that detail. Can we take a more in-depth look at what assets NATO does have to deter the Russians?
Yeah, significant actually. Let's start with home territory in the UK. There's two bases, RAF Lossiemouth right in the north of Scotland. That's called QRA, Quick Reaction Alert North. And then there's a base in the south called RAF Coningsby, which is QRA South. And you'll have two Typhoons that swap effectively periodically to make sure or ensure that there is quick reaction alert coverage 365 days, 24/7, basically protecting UK sovereign airspace. Now, in touch with that, or along with that, you've got Norway. Norway operates the F-35 fighters at a base called Evenes. That's in the north of Norway, and I think we can see on a map here just how north that is. Now, Norway's geography is really interesting. It goes all the way across the Northern Cape, across the top of Sweden, and shares a very small border with Russia. And what you've got on there is what's called an IADS, an integrated air defense network. So you'll have Norwegian radars right on the tip, probing and looking for Russian assets going west. They'll pick them up. And then what they'll do is they'll effectively hand over to UK radar, and they'll manage an intercept on it. The Swedes have two air bases, again, one in the north, one in the south. Their quick reaction alert jets are the JS-39 Gripen. And then you've got Finland, and as you'd expect, Finland sharing a 1,300-kilometre border with Russia. They've got 4 air bases, and they're operating the F-18. And what's interesting about the F-18 is the Finns have become really adept at operating these outside of airfields and deploying them to forests so they can operate off-roads.
Tell me about the Typhoon, because as you've just been explaining to the General, you've flown in them. So what sort of capability do they carry? Yeah,
I've flown alongside the pilots, looking at basically how they intercept an aircraft all the way outside of visual range. And I think we can see a picture of or a graphic of the Typhoon jet here. Basically, it's a mix of missiles. You've got a mix of missiles that give it what's called BVR, beyond visual range. Typhoon, for example, is using the Meteor missile. That goes out to about 125 miles. And then you'll have shorter range missiles, again, depending on the fit. That's called the ASRAAM. They can get out to about 5 to 20 kilometres. And then there's a Mauser gun on the side. So there are options depending on how the range comes down.
Let's take the example of the 3 MiGs that came into Estonian airspace. In terms of the options that the NATO pilots have, what do they have to respond to the threat, and what are they looking at when they're in the air?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've spoken to sources who are currently flying QRA in the UK, because the scenarios now are quite different. As you pointed out earlier on in the programme, quick reaction alert and intercepts have been going on for over 50 years. It's when foreign aircraft or enemy aircraft are then coming and loitering inside sovereign airspace. And so if you speak to the QRA pilots at the moment, especially from the UK, it's a graduated and proportionate response, but it's de-escalatory. Okay, so the last thing they want is the UK guys want to provoke some form of response that would escalate rapidly. So jets will get airborne. When we went out into Operation Chessman in Poland, the British and the Swedish jets were getting airborne without radar on. The first thing they'll do is they'll have a look at what armament the Russian jets have. So if we take a look at this picture of a MiG-31 Foxhound, that's actually got a Kinzhal hypersonic missile on it. Now that would deemed way higher threat than if the MiG-31 had air-to-air. Well, it's an air-to-ground missile. It's a hypersonic. It's got range. So, you know...
So it's not coming to engage aircraft, it's looking at targets on the ground.
Potentially.
Right.
And so
if you saw that as a NATO pilot, you'd have real concerns.
You'd have real concerns. So you'd get up close. You'd identify back to the chain of command what missiles it had in it. If it had air-to-air missiles and the MiG is pointing north, leaving sovereign airspace, that's de-escalating. If it's got an air-to-ground missile on it and it's heading in towards, say, a major urban centre, that would be considered escalatory. And so, you know, it's a very, very gentle, sensitive operation to work out what the proportionate response is going to be.
So beyond the QRA procedure that you're talking about, we now have Operation Sentry. I mean, what added capability does that give to NATO?
Yeah, Operation Eastern Sentry. So the Brits basically have now been flying over Polish airspace, Typhoons with a Voyager aircraft, which is a tanker. You have the French have basically deployed 3 Rafale jets into Poland against, again, air defense fighters. Germany have contributed 4 Typhoons. Denmark have provided F-16 fighter jets. But it's not just air assets we're talking about. We're talking about frigates. So Denmark have provided frigate as well as Germany. And these are air defense, right? So they've got really powerful air defense radars on these frigates, which again helps build that common operational air picture, the integrated air defense as we spoke about.
Mikey, as ever, thank you very much. That is it from the Security Brief. Just a reminder, you can catch up on all the episodes on YouTube. Next time, we're going to be looking at Donald Trump's recent pronouncement on nuclear testing, maybe probing the concerns you have if you've watched The House of Dynamite. Food for thought. We'll see you next time.